Hello, denizens of YouTube. Today I'll be turning these knife blades from Kin's Custom Iron into some knife holding tongs. I was gonna use this kit that came with to make some of these into knives, but then I picked up some tongs that I only got for railroad spikes. But these things work great for that size billet, so I might try to turn these tongs into something for the 2-inch wide 1095 that I got that I don't have anything that will hold properly. So I'm not sure if these rapid tongs from Kin's will do the trick. Will have enough material to expand out to hold 2-inch material, but we're about to find out. So as I was saying, I got this blacksmith's knife kit from Kin's Custom Iron. Here's the tong blanks, and they were designed to be made into knife tongs to hold these blanks here. Some mild steel, and then some W1 to make a real one. But I've since got these tongs mostly for railroad spike knives, but they hold this billet perfectly. So I think I might just use these for making the blacksmith's knife. Meanwhile, I've got these tongs that hold this. I think this is 1 1/4 inch mild steel. It's just something I've been practicing on, and it holds these pretty well after I reforged them to open up the jaws a little bit. But it definitely won't hold this 2-inch 1095. So I'm going to see if there's enough material to stretch these out to hold 2-inch material, and if not, then I'll just stretch these down. I'll figure out something. Maybe I'll go with the original billet size. We'll see. All right, let's get into it. Okay, so we're starting by heating up the tong end of the tongs. We got that square end there is going to eventually become the jaws that grab the material, so we got to stretch that out a little bit. Of course, Ken does this all in one heat per side, but he makes everything look easy. Well, of course, you know, he's been doing this for a long time, and I'm new at this, so I'm just trying to figure it out as I go, and hopefully you can learn a little bit from me as I go. So I'm also straightening this to try and keep the square shape as I go. That's why I hold it over the edge of the anvil and hammer toward the edge, because the metal wants to spread out, you know, the path of least resistance. So I keep tapping it as I move it in the direction I want. I keep tapping it in other places to keep it from going in the direction that I don't want. And I'm doing 2 at a time here, so I have one in the forge while the other one is being hammered out, and then I just swap them back and forth. So I'm pretty much constantly hammering with this project, which is different than the other projects I've done. It's actually a lot more exhausting, because usually when you're doing a knife or something, you have some time while the material's heating up to get a little rest, but this is just going back to the forge and continually hammering. So that's a little crooked there, but I'm going to fix it, and really what I'm doing is I'm trying to get the shape refined here. I think it's drawn out enough. I'm just trying to make sure yeah, they're pretty close. The second one I worked on wasn't as good, and that trend is going to continue here. So now I'm practicing just some gentle glancing blows, just try to stretch this out a little bit more. I actually probably stretched this out too much. I don't know if Ken really said how much we're supposed to stretch it out, but I think he said to get it down to like 1/8 of an inch thickness. So I might end up grinding some of this down a little bit because I can't close the tongs really how I want to close them. But that's after using them. You know, after you make a tong, you're going to have to keep modifying it for your use case. And I think I'm pretty close to the shape that I want for the tongs here. So I'm going to put what's going to be the left tong. They're identical right now, but this one's going to be the left tong. So I'm putting it in the left side of the vise. I'm going to bend it backwards to start to make the jaw to grab the material. And then for the next one, I'm going to take what will be the right tong, and I'm going to place it in the right side of the vise and do the exact same thing. And now they are no longer exactly the same, and one is to the left and one's to the right. The next step, Ken had a cutting deck on his anvil, which I don't have on this Chinese. Actually, I'm going to draw out the handle a little bit and round it over. So it came as, plasma cut out of a sheet metal, so it had, hard 90-degree corners on it. So I'm hitting on the flats to draw it out, and on the diagonals to round it over. So I'm just kind of spinning it all around and hitting it from every possible angle to draw it out and round it over at the same time, just to make it a little more comfortable to hold in the hand, but also to give me a little more distance from the forge, since I'm using a propane forge, and it does have a good amount of dragon's breath, as I say, just residual heat that's spitting out of it. So I do usually use a glove on my left hand to protect from that, but it also helps to have longer tong. One thing I was going to attempt to do here is I try to bang it on the anvil to upset the end, to try to get a little swell at the end of the reins, but that ended up, so I'm trying to hammer it now, ended up not really working well, and I just give it. One set of my tongs has a large, like almost like a pommel at the end of the reins, a ball for holding on to, and in retrospect, it's really not that necessary of a thing, and I'm fine with just the rounded over bar. So now I'm trying to put this 2-inch thick 1095 in there to form it. Long story short, that material is just way too big for what these tongs were. So, while it helps me bend it over here, the first one actually worked out really well because I did it on the anvil, but then I thought I was having such trouble holding the material that I'm going to go over to the vise and do it here with the second one. That was a mistake. The second one, because there's no anvil behind it to help me. Remember, when you hit something with a hammer, the anvil hits back and does the same thing on the other side. So that's why I'm having to work this a whole lot and adjust it. I should have just stuck to the anvil. Maybe one day I'll get an anvil that actually has a cutting deck that makes it easier to do this kind of rolling the U shape in. But for right now, I think doing it on top of the anvil would be the best. But I might be able to also try it on top of the horn up against the edge of the anvil, because there's some edge around where the horn is that almost could be like a cutting deck. So now I'm just making sure that they both line up, and I'm putting the material in there, and I'm realizing that there really isn't enough material in these things for this 2-inch material, to 2-inch knife blade. So I'm going to go back to the original 3/4-inch stock that came with the Kin's Blacksmith knife kit, and I'm going to start reforming everything to that. It's not that much different, because I think they're both 1/4 inch thick. This one's just more shallow, of course. 3/4 inch versus 2 inches. So I'm just putting it in there and trying to hammer around it to get it to form around that. Of course, it was falling in now, and then the blank's getting hot. I closed it down too much, so I'm using a chisel to try to open it up a little bit. And so this is the right one that I had a lot more trouble with than the left one. And now I'm having to reshape it a little bit after all that reforming of the jaws to get them to line up. That's probably the most difficult thing in retrospect for making tongs, is just getting them all to line up. Because one has to sit over top of the other, but then the jaws have to line up. So the right tong has a much more aggressive, actually the left tong, it depends on which way you're holding. It's all relative. But it has the one that sits on top has to have a much more aggressive bend downward, so that the tong side that's underneath of it lines up, the jaws all line up. So I'm just doing some fine tuning to make sure that all lines up good. This probably took me way too much time, but of course it was my first one. I've got some rebar I might try to make into a tong next, but I'm going to do a little bit differently there. I might try to do that for the 2-inch stock, but I've got some ideas, got some other tongs that I've been looking at to get ideas on how to do this. So this was just, Ken made this with a single purpose in mind. So this was great for learning, but the next one I make for that 2-inch material, I'm going to do it a little bit differently, especially since I'll be working with just rebar or round stock and not welding anything on. Though I am tempted to get the welder. That's kind of blacksmith cheating, though. If you can't form it out of your raw stock, it's cheating. This is a little bit cheating because Ken used a plasma cutter, I think, to cut these blanks out of a sheet metal, but that's an okay amount of cheating, especially for my first pair. So you see, you might be able to see some hard lines that are being etched into the surface of the metal. That's because my anvil here has really hard corners, and one thing I learned after posting a picture of these on my Facebook blacksmithing and bladesmithing groups is that hard edge is really making indentations here when I'm trying to hammer it over the edge to get that twist or get that offset into the tongs there. So I'm going to have to round over that side of the anvil, at least some of it, but I want to keep some hard so I have a surface I can do some hot cuts on. So now they're lined up, so it's time to drill. And my camera cut out on me after drilling for a little bit, so all you can see is when I start drilling. But I just drilled a 1/4-inch hole down through. Now I've dropped that rivet in, and that's a makeshift rivet bucking tool I have under it. It's just a piece of mild steel with a 1/2-inch hole drilled in it, so I can put the 1/2-inch rivet head in there and keep that in place and from deforming too much while I try to peen or smash now I'm peening over the other end of that just to secure that rivet in place. And just about got it there. So now I'm going to take it over to the grinder to clean this up a little bit after I knock off the rivet bucking tool that got stuck on there. So now that the rivet's in there good, and we're rotating around good, this did need to be eased a little bit. After I quenched them, I opened them and closed them a whole bit. Actually, no, while it was still hot, and I used clear pliers and a tong to open and close them a bit, just so it eased the tension, the friction on that rivet point, so it would open and close easily. And now I'm over here on my 2x42 book tool grinder. Link in the description, Amazon affiliate. It'll help me if you're thinking about buying one, but it doesn't cost you more. But I'm further rounding out the hard edges on this that I hadn't hammered out, and even the ones that I have hammered out, I'm getting them closer to round, just for a more comfortable hold, really. And I did end up cleaning up the jaws a little bit, but that's really unnecessary because you're just going to be sticking these in the forge. They're going to get blackened again. So it's really just important to get the handle, the reins of tongs. Here's the finished product. They work pretty well. I just used them to make the blacksmith's knife you're going to be seeing in an upcoming video. I've got, this is mild steel. I've got 2 more mild steel blanks to work on, and then one W1, which will be cut in an upcoming video. I ended up switching to these other tongs that I have about halfway through because they held the blade in better when I was trying to draw out the tang. But, you know, that's why you have lots of different types of tongs for different situations. All in all, these things are great. So thanks to Kin's Custom Iron. I did pay for these. These are not a sponsored video at all. But you can check the link in the description for anything I used in this video. And, of course, do all that YouTube stuff, like, comment, subscribe, and all that stuff if you want to keep seeing videos from me on my blacksmithing journey. Otherwise, I'll just stop recording, and, you know, you don't want to see that. Thanks.